Today's talk is on a topic that all of us need, but it's so hard to fully understand. Nothing happens in life without will, without ratzon. If you look at your business, you look at your marriage, if you can hand one thing to your kids, if I would give you a pill and say, whatever trait you want, you can put it into a pill and your kids can take it and have it, I would suggest that the pill you give your children is the pill of ratzon, of will. Because you know, no matter what happens in life, if you're a person with no will, with no ratzon, with no determination, life will barrel you over. And if everything is perfect and it's always smooth sailing, then fine. But greatness is never that. But whatever life throws at you, wherever you go in life, and whatever you're pursuing right now, whether that is spiritual or secular, whatever is in your mind right now that you want, the path to get it comes by understanding the core of will. So let's talk a little bit about that today. And I hope by the time we're done, we'll get a better understanding so that we can put it into our lives to become better people. So I want to tell you how I got my first job. So I'm not a rabbi, as I said last night. I started my career as being an attorney. I went to a school in New York, in the Upper West Side, called Columbia University. And the way it works in Columbia is that after your first year, you get your grades, and then you go the next morning or during that period of time, and they don't have you go out to interview for your job. That would be crazy to get all the students out. They don't have all the firms come to the college. That would be disrespectful. So what happens is they take all the students and they take all the firms, the law firms, and they put them in a hotel for 3 days of binge interviewing. And you got to figure out what firms you're going to go for, right? If you go for the ones too high, you don't get a job. Too low, you sell yourself short. So it's like a whole exercise of game theory to figure out like which firms do you put in the 10 slots that you have. So there was one firm that I wanted to work for. The firm was called Davis, Polk & Wardwell. It was a very waspy firm. In America, we have something called WASPs. They're Americans. And I love them very much. There's something about them that I just love. I don't know if it's they get Roman numerals after their names, they get mahogany walls, the Mayflower, they get to use words like lad and son that we can't use growing up in Brooklyn. I love WASPs. And I wanted to work in the waspiest firm in the city. But there, I did well, but I didn't do that well. So I didn't even put them on my list. So I go my first day, my second day. This is, in the year 2000. Back in the year 2000 in America, there was this weird correlation, which is you went to school and you got a job. Like weird stuff happened like that. And everyone was getting jobs. So they were throwing off their extra interviews, right? If you got your job on your first day, you wouldn't stay for 3 days. But I'm a Jew. And if you're a Jew, I'm taught, if it's 3 days, you stay 3 full days. I don't know. It's maybe they're giving out tote bags or bagels. I don't know. You got to stay to the end, right? If it's free, you take 2. That's how I was raised. So I'm there on the last day, and I kid you not, the room is this big, and there's like 12 from Jews in the front row. And there's a screen this size, and on the screen are all the interviews for the third day, but they all are being thrown off by the guys who got their jobs. So what you're seeing is all the firms, and then it says available, 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 available. As the interviews are becoming available, I'm like, and then on the last slot, on the last day, the 5:30 slot, it said Davis, Polk & Wardwell, and it went available. I'm like, should I go for it? I'm like, I'm never going to get it. I'm like, but I'm here, but I'm never going to get it, but I'm here. I'm like, I'm going for it. I go up to the lady. I like to apply for the interview. She goes, hold on. She puts my name down. 2 minutes later, it says David, Polk & Wardwell, Charlie Harary. So I go up to do the interview. And as soon as I walk in, I realize this is going to be the worst interview of my entire life. The partner they send in for the 5:30 slot on the last day was a brand new partner that they just flew in from China. He speaks no English. I speak no Chinese. It makes for a great conversation. I'll tell you a funny story. I've got a neighbor across the street. This is a true story. He lives across the street. He is a laid-back American guy. He married a hot-blooded Israeli woman. This is not a joke. He speaks no Hebrew. She speaks no English. Don't understand what your wife says, apparently is marital bliss to the end. That's what they say. I'm just kidding. I can say it now because my wife's in America. I'm in South Africa. I would never tell this joke in New York. He's in the morning, he's sitting up, cup of coffee, enjoying the morning. She is screaming words I didn't even know her. He didn't even know. I couldn't believe it. He turns to me, he goes, "What? You're Jewish. What is she saying?" I'm like, "You should go in the house right now. Like this second. She's Israeli. She can kill you with her eyes. Go in now." So I go to this interview. He looks at me and goes, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "Can you repeat the question?" He goes, "Name." I'm like, "Okay, almost got this. Just slow it down and drop for me." He goes, "Name." I'm like, "Oh, name. Oh, I know this answer for sure. Charles Harary." So then he asks me, "Why do you want to be a lawyer?" I only heard, "Do you want to be a lawyer?" "Why do you want to be a lawyer?" "Yes." And he's looking at me like, "Yes, very much. Yay contracts, go juries." So at this point he realizes that I'm a complete moron and he's not going to talk to me. So he realizes that there's no point. So he looks down on my resume and he spends 20 minutes, no joke. You know how long 20 minutes of silence is? I do. It's death. 20 minutes not saying, because you got to give the student a period of time, not one word. 20 minutes, silence. After 20 minutes, he picks up his head and goes, "Talmud?" And I'm thinking, he didn't say Talmud, that's for sure. I'm like, "What rhymes with Talmud?" I'm like, Almud, Balmud, Kalmud, Lamud. I'm like, "Did you say Talmud?" Do you know that when you go to Israel for the year, anyone have this after you graduate high school, and they don't know what to do with their resume, so they make you like an advanced Talmudic master? You know what I'm talking about? He looks at him and goes, "You know Talmud?" I'm thinking, I don't know where he is going, but I like it. I go, "Yes." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "I just got in from China." I'm like, "Yeah, I can tell." He goes, "And my first week, they brought me to meet all the partners." The way it works in these big firms in New York is that the smartest guys, they put in the tax department. Guys like me end up in real estate. All like the guys that were like yeshiva guys, they're all in tax. He goes, "And they brought me around to meet all the partners, and there was one man who was considered the guru of tax. They would wait online to speak to this man. He was a Jewish man. And I walked into his office, and I said hello to this sage. And I saw behind him was this beautiful bookcase of the tax code. And in the corner, he had a different color binding. And I said to the Jewish man, "Excuse me, sir, what's that?" And the man said, That's the Talmud. If you think the tax codes are hard, this is 10 times harder." He looks at me and says, "You must be a genius." So I'm like, well, I don't like to brag, you know. I mean, I mingle around you people to see how you live. And he goes, "It is an honor to meet you." I said, "It is an honor you met me as well, clearly." So I walk out of this interview. I went to a payphone. Back in those days, for anyone under the age of 25, there were phones attached to walls back then. And I called my wife and I said, "Dina, I don't know if Hashem's having a birthday party in heaven or what's happening right now, but someone's having fun with this. And if you get a call back from Davis Polk, just so me and you know, let's not get our hopes up. This was a little bit of a gimmick." So I go back to Davis Polk and the way it works in these callbacks in the American firms, they bring you there for the whole day and they interview you like a lot. They want to see if you're their material, right? They want to see, like, do you ever want to see sunset? Do you ever want to go outside and see sunlight? Or you want to sit all day in the office? And if you say, "No, why would I want to see the sun until I'm 50 years old?" They're like, "You're just like us." That's what they're looking for. So I went there and I had all my interviews and I'm nodding. "Yeah, no, I'd love to write all day, of course." And, absolutely. I love big rooms with lots of documents. Yes. And I'm going through my day. And then what they do is to figure out who you are, they take you to lunch. And then that's when they have like more of a casual conversation. So I go to lunch. It's a restaurant in the city called Prime Grill. And I'm with a woman about my age and a man a good 7, 8 years older than me. She's talking, wonderful. He is stiff as a board. I mean, stiff. Doesn't say one word the entire meal. I mean, he's barking orders at the waitress. Halfway through the meal, all the small talk is done, and it's uncomfortable. And he turns to me, and he goes, "So, I see you're a Jew." I'm like, "Oh, okay." This is where the interview ends. I said, "What gave it away? The cloth on my head? I'm not the Pope." So he says to me, "Are you a Jew?" I said, "I am." He goes, "Well, it's an honor to know you." I said, "Okay." Meanwhile, I'm thinking, "For real, God?" And God's like, "I am just getting started with you, Charlie." I said, "Thank you for the honor." He goes, before I went to law school, I was a Marine. And us Marines respect nobody but the Israeli commandos. And I'm thinking, he thinks I'm an Israeli commando? I'm like, "That's right, Sergeant. Alpha, Beta, Delta, Charlie. I was rappelling off the Mediterranean with my Talmud in one hand." I killed the chicken. You didn't see. It's a Mossad trick. And at that point, I realized I was getting the job. So I put my feet back. I ordered the fake creme brulee. And I said, now I'm doing the interviewing. I said, excuse me, Mr. U.S. Marine. Where do you get off telling me that there's anyone in the world you respect but the Marines? So he tells me the following. This is great. He says, I grew up in Texas. All my stories are from Texas for some reason. And I was built to be a soldier. My dad was a soldier. My uncle was a soldier. I was going one place when I graduated high school. I was going into the Corps, into the Marine Corps. And I wasn't a good soldier. I was an incredible soldier. And I was a soldier in the 90s. And in the 90s, the world, this is before 9/11. In the 90s, I mean, forget about it. God blessed America with liberty and safety. I had this internal problem. I was wondering what I was doing. I wanted to fight for something, but everything that I wanted to fight for, we already had. I believed in liberty and justice and freedom for all, but we were blessed by God in our country with all of those traits. I didn't know who I was and what I was fighting for. What was I, a peacekeeper in Bosnia? And then I was selected by my commander to go to Israel to train with Israeli commandos for a week and to share tactics and strategies. And at the end of the training, we go up to this hill that you guys call Masada. And on the hill, the commander sits us in a semicircle and says, you know why I brought you to this hill? Because a long time ago, we used to have a temple, and the Jews were able to practice their religion freely. But the Romans came in and destroyed it. But it wasn't enough for them to destroy our religion. They needed to destroy our people. So a few people ran for their lives, and they came up to this hill. And all they wanted was to be left alone. But the Romans wouldn't have it. And they followed them up, and they came up to the hill. And as they climbed to the hill, the Jews looked to the left, but no one was there to save them. They looked to the right, but no one was there to save them. And they realized that they had nobody on the left and on the right, so they killed themselves. You know why you're here, the commander told the American Marines? Because for centuries we're waiting for somebody to save us. And we're done waiting. We look to the left, we look to the right, we'll protect ourselves. We'll take care of ourselves. We'll defend ourselves. We're back in our homeland, and we are never leaving again. And at that moment, that Marine said to me, you know, I always wondered about you people. Don't you love when they say that? I'm like, whoa. He goes, you know, I go to a class, and at 1 minute I go to the Holocaust Remembrance class, and they talk about how you guys are all a bunch of victims. Then I go to the Israeli Army class, and we're telling over F-16 fighter pilot strategies. How do you have a nation that goes from the gas chamber to military greatness? And now I understand. Because you people know who you are and what you're fighting for. You are not just some nation. You're a nation that returned to their homeland after thousands of years. You know who you are? You are that nation that's home again. You're not fighting for an ideal. You're not fighting for a principle. You're fighting for a border. You lose a war, you lose a border. You lose a town, you lose your mother's house. And when you know what you're fighting for, you know who you are, and you know what you're fighting for, you can accomplish anything. I got to tell you, that happened a while ago. But there isn't a day in my life, not one, that when I wake up in the morning, somewhere through the morning routine of getting dressed and brushing my teeth, do I not hear that voice in my ear? If you know who you are and you know what you're fighting for, you can accomplish anything. You ever get that feeling sometimes in life? You're going and going and going and coming and going, and the wheels are turning, but it's not hitting the pavement. And with all the effort, we're thinking, like, how much more effort can I put in? I'm exhausted. I don't walk to Shabbos. I crawl to Shabbos. I have no more left. And with all that I do all the time, why don't I feel like I'm on the 50? Why don't I feel like I'm accomplished? Why don't I feel like I am more? And the answer is not by doing more. The answer is by seeing clearer. It's by getting clear with the following. Who are we? Who are we? And what are we fighting for? Why are we here? Why do we care? And it's all nice, and everything is nice, but unless you cut to the core and hit it in the gut, You can't activate the will to become great. Israel doesn't have an idea who they are. It's clear as day. That's why they're great. And I want to suggest today that there is an answer. And the answer actually is encapsulated with the most pregnant, incredible, filled, saturated 2 words in the entire Tanakh. As you'll hopefully hear from some of the speeches that I give, Tanakh to me is where you get all the good stuff. The stories of our people. God could have written a book of law. It would have been easy for him to say, do this, do this. He didn't. He wrote a book of stories. Not because he's soft, because he's smart and he understands that if you tell a story, you can nestle in the real good stuff. And if we want to understand how to be great, it's just our stories. And I want to tell you a story today about 2 individuals in Torah. You may have heard this story a million times before. And I would suggest if you got a Jewish education, you've heard this a million times. But I would ask you today to hear it with a little bit of a different ear. It's a story that you may have heard, but within the story is nestled 2 words. And those 2 words, I think, hold the secret to who we are and what we're fighting for, what makes us us. So allow me to tell you the story. It begins with a man named Yaakov, Jacob. And Jacob had an incredible life. And Jacob had a soulmate. By the way, if you go through Torah, you'll never really see everyone talk about men and women in a very intimate way. Even when you say it, I don't really mean the people. It's hard to speak about people in Torah like they're me and you. But from what we've learned, if you go through the story, you rarely see Avraham and Yitzchak, and they don't really have, the Torah doesn't go out of its way. I'm sure their marriages were incredible, but the Torah doesn't go out of its way to profess the love of all the parties involved, with really one glaring exception. Jacob, no? The story of him and Rachel is incredible. He shows up, he sees her at the well and says, she's my soulmate. It's incredible. It's an incredible, touching story. He loves her so much that when his father pulls a shtick and gives her the sister and says, if you want Rachel, you got to go back to work, he goes, whatever it is. I'm not settling. I'll do whatever it takes for that one woman. I know for sure me and her are bound by our souls. And she dies. We forget that these are human beings. God forbid should you ever go to a shiva of a man who loses a wife when they're young? His soulmate? Can you imagine something? If you got, God forbid, a notice, you wouldn't say, oh my gosh, that's horrible. Yaakov lost his wife young. And he was broken his whole life. And she died in childbirth, but she had already an older son named Joseph. And Joseph looked like her and talked like her and carried her legacy. And in Joseph, he saw the future of Rachel, and Jacob made it his mission to build Joseph up into a person that would, at the very least, carry on the legacy of his mother, his wife. And he did that. And while he had other children and he treated them all well, it was Joseph that got the extra treatment. And he brought him a coat. Remember the story? We all know this. And he brought him a coat, and he invested in him. He infused in him. And Joseph grew up. He's 15, 16, 17 years old. He was a person. He talked. He was a leader. He saw things. He had visions. And Jacob at least had a drop of nachas, knowing that while I lost my wife, at least her legacy lives on in her son. And one day he tells Joseph, do me a favor. Go see your brothers. In fact, the class I'm giving today at 4 is going to be the same story, but from the Joseph perspective. So hopefully at the end of the day, you'll see 2 angles with 2 totally different lessons. But now let's look at it from the Jacob perspective. And Jacob sends Joseph off to see his brothers, and never in a million years would he have ever dreamed of what happens next. The brothers come home after a while, if you remember, and Jacob is losing it. Anyone who's got kids who tells the kids, you know, are you going out? Can you text me when you get there? Text me when you get there. Text me when you get there. Can you imagine? And all of a sudden the boys are coming back, and he's looking and he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He goes, guys, where's Joseph? They go, what do you mean? He goes, guys, where's Joseph? And the brother's like, what are you talking about? He goes, guys, I sent you Joseph. Where is Joseph? And the brothers go, Dad, we didn't see him. He goes, what do you mean you didn't see him? I sent you Joseph. How's that possible? And he goes, Dad, we didn't see him. And one brother goes, but on the way we found this. And he picks up a coat. Can you imagine? Be a parent for a second. And he sees Joseph's coat dripping in blood.
He lost his wife. He lost his son. He kneels to the grave in grief. And time goes on. And there's a famine in the land. And there's no food. So he tells his boys, go down to Egypt. Apparently there's food in Egypt. They knew nothing that Joseph had risen to be king. And bring back food. So he goes down to Egypt. They come back to Egypt. And they go, Dad, the craziest thing happened. We go down. They knew about us. They asked questions about us. And the king said, if you don't come back with Benjamin, you're not invited back at all. We got to take Benjamin. And Jacob goes, no way. I lost my wife, lost my kid. This is all I got left. This is it. If I lose this kid, her whole line, her whole life is gone. No way. And the brothers go, okay. But time goes on. And it gets worse. And now everyone's going to die. And the brothers come back and they go, Dad, we got to take him. And one brother steps up. His name was Judah. And Judah says to his father, Dad, I got him on my back. You ever do this, by the way, when you're a little kid and your parents go out and your mom's like, watch your brother, like you become like G.I. Joe. You're like, you got him, Ma. I got this. I got him. I'm 3 and she's 1. I got this. It's okay. You guys can go on vacation on a holiday for a week. I'm cool. 3 years old. And Judah goes down, and just for a minute, I once had the opportunity to study with a man. I did a chavrusa on the phone with an individual who was a filmmaker. It was incredible. And as we were studying these chapters together, he had never studied this before. He was so enthralled, he would send me score music as we were speaking. In the back, you have all the music. It's so dramatic if you think about it. We've sterilized this so much because we force it down the throats of each other, but it's so dramatic. Jacob watching his boys leave to some king that knows too much, that has some sinister plan, and leaving the last vestiges of Rachel with them. And they go down to Egypt, and in the beginning everything is fine. And they welcome him. Remember the story? They welcome him into the palace. Joseph is the king at this point, but nobody knows. And he pretends that he doesn't know them, and they sit them down, and all the brothers are around, and he fills their sack with all the grain, and they have a meal, and everything is fine. They pack up all the sacks, they put it onto all the donkeys, and they're about to head back up home, and everything is great. They got this, everything is better than they could have imagined. And on the way, they stop in an inn to sleep at night. And you could imagine if you were there, I bet you they took Benjamin and they stuck him in the corner. I would bet you they had Shmirah over Benjamin. And they probably slept around him. And they're all with their arms crossed. Because all they had to do was wake up and take the grain and take Benjamin, and they're free. And just probably when the last brothers dozed off, they hear a knock on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Who is it? Bang, bang, bang. And they open it up. The police. Police? How can I help you, officer? The Egyptian police. How can I help you, officer? You get invited to the king's palace. He sits you at the royal table, and you steal the goblet. Remember the story? They had actually, those who didn't know the story, they planted the goblet in one of the bags, in Benjamin's bags, but nobody knew. And the brothers go, steal the goblet? We're Jacob's children. We're children of truth. We would never have taken a goblet. And the police go, really? Okay, let's see. We're going to search the bag. And if we find the goblet in that bag, that person becomes his slave for life. And the brothers go, search away. Remember? Bag, 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 bag. Benjamin's bag, this is what we call in Hebrew code red bag. And now the scene turns. But for a minute, be back with me. This isn't a bunch of yeshiva guys putting on a Purim play. This actually happened. There was a place called Egypt, and there was an actual palace. But so to get the story, just for a second, take yourself to the palace. And picture a huge palace with a king sitting on a massive throne. And there are probably people with the things, waving, and they're eating grapes. They always ate grapes back then for some reason. And they're eating grapes, and they're sitting around. And there's probably a huge court of people. And all of a sudden they go, all rise. And the king walks in, and he sits on the throne. And in front of him are 10 Jews, all the brothers. Most likely in togas and sandals. And next to the king is Benjamin, probably in shackles. And the brothers begin. Your honor, your highness, your holiness, this must have been a mistake. There's no way he could have taken the goblet. Benjamin's such a wonderful kid. Please have mercy. Jews, the king says, silence. The boy's mine. And the brothers go, no. Look at us. We're stronger. We're better fighters. We're mightier. We can be better. We'll be better servants. Please, just take me, please. Don't let him go. And the king goes, Jews, go home. Guilty, the boy's mine. And they go, please, we have a father, and the father is old, and he lost his wife, and he lost his son, and this is the only son he has left, and if he loses one more son, he's gonna literally die. And the king, who happens to be Joseph, but they don't know, says, Jews, for the last time, stop and go home. Guilty, boy's mine. And 9 Jews turn around, and 1 Jew steps up. And herein lies everything. And the verse begins, I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate, because just to get it is so. And the verse opens up. 1 Jew steps up named Judah. Remember? And you can imagine, he probably stepped up and there were 100 knives in his neck. And the pasuk begins, Vayigash elav Yehudah. And Judah steps forward. And Vayigash is not step, it's like a lunge forward. Vayomar, and he says 2 words. Be Adoni, which the simple way of understanding it is, excuse me, my master. But there's a commentator named the Sfas Emes who quotes the Arizal, which is fun for the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim. And he says, that's not what he said. Vayigash elav Yehudah, and Judah stepped forward, Vayomar, and he said, be inside me, Adoni is my master. Judah turned and goes, whoa, wow, you are so scary, Egyptian king. Look at you, taking our brother, beating up on a couple of weak Jews, and what, are we gonna run home to daddy and cry because we're all scared of you? You could just commit an injustice and, oh, I guess you must have missed the memo. Let me explain to you what you're looking at, because it looks like it's just a body. And I get that. You probably think you're stronger than us and you can just beat us up. But let me explain to you what we are, who we are as a people. You may see a body like everybody else, but what you miss is be Adoni. Inside me is my master. We look around and somehow, over the course of education, we have taken God and put him up. I don't know when this started, that God became up. Where do you pray to? Up. Ask a kid, where is God? Up. Where up? Over where? Over the heavens? Over the clouds? Where is God? God's not up. Spirituality is not there. God isn't up. He's in. When God created the world, it's called in Kabbalah a concept called Na'ama Dikisufa. What it means that when God created the world, he didn't leave the world and he's not up. God's not sitting on a throne looking down to see if we're naughty or nice. God's not up, he's in. The divine is in everything. Every one of us right now, if your eyes are open, I speak to people all over the world and they tell me, I'm a good Jew, I'm a bad Jew, I'm an Intuit Jew, I'm a Philly. I'm like, it's all nonsense. What you have inside you is more divine than you can ever use in your entire lives. You never have to be in Judaism. You have to reveal. It's all in there already. God's not up, he's in. God's inside us. He's inside the world. He's inside everything. The goal of a Jew is not to reach out. It's to tap in. Every single one of us, what's the real core of how we're made, we manifest physically. But who we are and how we're made at our core is that every single one of us is built with the divine inside us. And for the first time in history, a man faced a challenge, and as opposed to rolling over like a weak victim and feeling like all he is his body, he understood that who he really is a source that has so much more. a source of power that he never tapped into, a source of wisdom that he could never have accessed. When he understood that right now, I don't know how I'm overcoming this, but this is wrong, and I would rather die fighting for right than give up because it's just too hard. When you tap in, where does the strength come from to walk to the 50? Where did Esther get it from? Where does every Jew ever get the strength from? Either you have it or you don't. The answer is, it's all inside already. We all have it. The question is, do we recognize it? And for the first time, a man stood up and said, be Adoni. Either you give him back or we're going to have a go, either way. And it was at that moment that everything collapsed. And if you look at his name, Yehuda, it's amazing. Anyone who has a kid named Yehuda, you see a name, and in the name is God's name. Because Yehuda stands for royalty. And what it means to be royalty in the Jewish people is not having a big palace or a big house or having all wonderful things. Royalty is not when you stand up on stage. That's not what it means to be a prince and a princess. What it means to stand like a royal member of the Jewish people is one thing. You follow in the trait of Judah. We walk around and we stare down challenge. And what we say to the challenge is, you have no idea what's inside me. And all of us had this, by the way. All of us had a moment in our lives where we were pushed against the wall and we found something in ourselves that we never thought existed. You know what I mean? When you bring your child home for the first time from the hospital, right? You ever have that when you have a baby? It's all fun and games till they give you it. And then even at the hospital, when they give you the kid, you're like, really? I can just take this home? You're like, yeah, you had it. You raised it. Like, there's no state law against me taking home kids, right? And I don't care if you had nieces and nephews. I don't care if you're a mower of 100 kids. When you bring your kid home, it's business. And you know what the best part about bringing a kid home from the hospital for the first time, remember first-time parents, is that the bar is so low. You know what I'm talking about? The only goal is just don't kill it. That's it. If you keep it alive after 1 week, it could be dirty. It's like, we're the best parents ever. And you know what you feel like when you go through the parenting experience? There is no way I'm going to survive. You speak the best feeling. Anyone who has children that are over the age of 4 or 5 and you can breathe again, and you see a young family that has like a 2-month-old kid, it's hysterical, right? And you see the fear in their eyes. I'm not going to live my life. I'm going to die. And you're like, no, you'll be fine. They're like, I don't know how that's possible. You know what happens? You tap into something that was always there, but that never had to come out. It's your divine self of kindness and patience and more patience, and God help, more patience, maybe a little alcohol, but a lot more patience. And for the first time, a man stood up and he identified that. He brought it to life. And if you go around and you follow, by the way, follow the trait of godless. Just follow it. It's incredible. Follow the stream of royalty in the Torah. What do you find by every single person that had the trait of Judah? You look at his grandson, Nachshon. Remember the story? The Jews are by the water, and Moses says, go in. And the Jews are like, but there's no boardwalk. What are we even doing here in the first place? And he's like, no, it's a water. Like, we don't know how to swim. And he's like, just walk. And the entire nation said, we're going to die. One guy from Judah said, we're walking in. They go, but what if you die? And he goes, God said walk. And he goes, but what if you die? And he goes, God said walk. They go, but what if you die? And he goes, guys, forward. And that same lineage delivered a man named Kalev. Remember the story of the Jews before they got into Canaan? The Jews are standing in front of Israel, in front of Canaan, and God says, okay, guys, good luck. You're going to be great. Go out, fight a war. And the Jews go, I'm sorry. I must have misheard you. Wait. Are you going to do what you did in Egypt? Because that was great stuff in Egypt. Man, you are more creative than we give you credit for. Wow. I can't wait to see what you have up your sleeve for Canaan. And God goes, oh, no, I'm sorry. I forgot. Did they not tell you? You guys are fighting. And they're like, we're Jews. We're not going to fight. Like, we can negotiate for you. That's fine. We can sue you, you know what I'm saying? We can heal the people that get sick. I mean, we can eat you to death. I can call my mom and she can guilt you to death, that's for sure. I think the most underused force in the Jewish people, I believe, are Jewish moms. If the Mossad understood the power of Jewish guilt, I think the world would be different. That's just my own personal opinion. But one thing we're not gonna do, God, is fight, you know? You're never going to see a bunch of guys come out of like a bar and then like a yeshiva lets out and the guys are out of the bar going, yo, let's cross the street. The yeshiva guys are over there. Ever. Unless they get in trouble with their moms, it's going to be more complicated. And we go to God, we go, we're not fighting. And God goes, oh, no, you'll be fine. And remember what the Jews did? The Jews, they just collapsed. We're going to die. We're going to die. Let's go back to Egypt. We're going to die. One person stood up. From which lineage? From Judah. You know what he said? He said, Olo na'ale v'nirashnu oso. Let's go conquer it. Because yachol nuchal la. Because you may have heard this, if you've been following American politics the past decade, we actually elected a president on 3 words. They were Kaleb's words. Because yes, we can. Yes, we can means I don't know how to do this. And I'm scared to death. And I feel vulnerable saying what I should say. And I don't know what's going to happen if I walk into that place. But I believe in my heart that there's a piece of me that's inside that I have never experienced before, but that I will experience when I push myself to the test. That's the nakuda. The will, the essence of will, is doing something knowing, although I've never experienced it yet, I believe that there's something inside me that will come out if I push myself further. The essence of ratzon, the essence of will, is not just having a go-getter attitude. It's not just being optimistic. It's not just smiling and taking some Prozac and going, yes, 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 we can. The essence of will is belief. The essence of will is understanding who we are. And we are a people, every human has this. But we are a people that is infused by the divine from the inside, and the only way to bring out the divine is through challenge. The only way to be a parent is by that all-nighter not knowing what you're doing. The only way to be kind to your spouse is by actually getting married. The only way to see an Indarba is by actually trying to put an event like this together in the world. There's no other way to tap into ourselves but for going through that path of vulnerability. You will have for eternity 100 Shabbos tables politicking over the future of Israel, but the only people that have the right to talk about what it means to be great are the Israeli soldiers that at 6, 7, 18 sit in the trenches. And I can tell you, because anyone who knows one or is one knows, there isn't one soldier that sits in a trench and says, this is nothing. There isn't one mom that sits home in her house on a Friday night with her child with a gun and says, nah, he'll be fine. It's the pain and the challenge. That's what taps into the greatness. And you can never get there if you think all you are is what you see. 10 brothers turned around because that's the normal way of thinking. There's only one, only the elite, only the small percentage that in their core embodies the Yehudi, that embodies the Jew. And if you notice, we are named not by coincidence, Jews. You know who we're named after? Judah. Isn't that the story of King David? Remember the story of King David? Isn't it the best story ever? Right? Jews are battling. Like I said last night, the Philistines had Goliath, the tallest Jew ever, 6'5", you know what I'm talking about? Tallest person a Jew's ever seen. And he steps up on the battlefield. Remember the story? And he taunts the whole Jewish nation. This 6'5" armored guy, and he's cursing God, and all the Jews are like, no, 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 no. And King Saul says, whoever fights Goliath will get my daughter's hand in marriage. And everyone's like, that's okay, we'll just let someone else marry her. We'll come to the shmorg early. I'm sure there'll be sushi. And David shows up. Do you remember the story? David wasn't even in the army. He came to bring lunch to his brothers. Does it get less masculine than that? He's like, hey guys, turkey and tuna, what do you want? They're like, really? They're like, there's no mayo in the tuna. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. They're like, pickles, David, pickles. He's like, what's going on? They're like, well, there's a guy, Goliath. And he goes, what's he doing? They're like, he's cursing God. And David goes, what? I'll fight him. And they go, oh, is that adorable? David's going to fight. This isn't a harp contest. No, we go home. Remember the story? And they give him the uniform. And there wasn't a uniform that was small enough for him. Do you remember that? You know that kid like in 7th grade or whatever it is, that when they put him on the field and there isn't a jersey small enough, so his jersey's like a skirt, you know what I'm talking about? You can never block that kid, that's the rule. That was David. Can you imagine Goliath's face when they bring out the 5'2" Jew that shows up. He's probably thinking, really? You're bringing me the Jewish accountant? What is he going to do, my taxes? What's going on over here? And you know what David says? He's cursing God. You're just rolling over? You're just giving up? Do you know who we are? Read the verse. The God that saved me from the lion and the bear, he's not going to save me now? I'd rather die on the challenge than go home and be comfortable. And being David, he figured out a way to create a slingshot, which ultimately became a gun, and he patented it, sold it for millions of dollars. He runs a successful company. He lives in Israel right now, and his life is perfect. He's retired, and all the kids are in the business, like a good Jewish family. And from the beginning of time until now, and I challenge you, look back in your life, the beginning of time until this moment, you will see that this community and every community in the history of Judaism is built on the backs of the few Judahs of our people. On the backs of the few people that say, I got nothing left, but it's right, I'm going to move forward, and there's something that's inside that's coming out. Those few Jews, men and women, those few people, the Esthers of our people and the Judahs of our people, those few people that look at every challenge from big and small, from the kid who doesn't line up like the rest of your kids and everyone gives up, but you never give up on that kid, to the marriage that isn't as perfect as you think when you first get married, to the shul that doesn't engage enough people and you engage it more. If you look at every aspect of every part of one's life, it comes down to one thing. Am I the 10 brothers that turn around when I stare up a challenge? Or am I the one brother that believes that God is in me? And when I jump into challenge, I'm going to find something that I never could have found inside me but for that challenge. That's the source of will. Will isn't a nice idea. It's not a cutesy story. Ratzon is the core of the human being. In the world of Sephiros, which is the world of Kabbalah, the highest sphera is a sphera called Keter. That's God's holy crown. The word Keter has a trait. You know what the trait is, the Kabbalists tell us? Ratzon, desire. Because all we are, if you break down your life, if God gives you life, all you really are is what your desire is. Because you fail, you succeed. There's a lot of factors. Ein hadavar ha'omed lifnei haratzon. Nothing stands before ratzon. And what it means to be a Jew, who we really are, I believe, is a nation that is struggling to never forget, be Adoni. That he is inside me, not above me. And he's inside you. And that's what makes you so special. And he's inside everything. And when I walk with that pride, when I walk with that gravitas, when I walk with not the arrogance, but when I walk with the confidence of what it means to know that the creator of the universe has a piece of himself inside the lowly body of me, what can I try? What can I do? What can I attempt, whether I win or whether I lose? Why would I live on the 20? That's the legacy of Yehuda. That's the legacy of royalty. That's what it means to be a king and a queen in Judaism. And that has been the legacy of the Jewish people from then until now. And it'll be forever. Ratzon is what makes us who we are. And the challenge that stands in front of us in this community and every community will be solved by all of us once we realize that the truth is there's nothing that really stands before us except for ourselves. My blessing to each and every one of you, and for those that will be with me later in the day, we're going to talk about the Joseph angle and how to hear God speak to you. Today's afternoon class is the other angle of the Joseph angle that I hope you'll come to. But even if you don't, it's been an honor, really, to be here with you, and my blessing to you in this community is that you should be a paradigm of what it means to be a Yehudi, individually and collectively. Nothing should stand in our way of at least attempting to crawl and claw to where we're meant to be. Because, like I said last night for those that were here, the ultimate Jewish question is, Umi Yodeya, who knows if for this moment you're created? Who knows if God put us in this world and gave us our challenges and our community, because we are uniquely situated, if we just tap into the depth of our divine self, to become the greatest person that we can be, to go from good to great to awesome. Thank you very much.